Security, or rather insecurity, has been at the lips, if not the minds of many Kenyans this week. 6 people lost their lives at the hands of unknown gunmen exactly 7 days ago at the Joy in Jesus Church in Likoni. Since then, government has flooded us with tough rhetoric, beginning, of course, with the Deputy IG Samuel Arachi, who just a day after the attack had this to say.
We've gotten leads so far, very good leads. And we believe possibly even before the end of the day, we may have people who are directly involved in this in custody.
Well, it's been 7 days since the church shooting, and just as was the case last Sunday, Kenyans once again woke up to news that yet another church could have been the target of sorts after a hand grenade was found inside it in Peketoni. The safety pin was not on the grenade, according to some reports, and I think we all know what that means, assuming, of course, that it was a grenade. There are conflicting reports on this. Then there is, of course, the incident that we aired earlier from Pangani, where one person died in the process of what police say was putting an explosive together. Cabinet Secretary Joseph Olelenku has been oddly quiet, and the one time he broke his silence, it was in a written statement. In the statement, it would appear that he was more concerned with the state of refugees in the country, saying that all refugees in Kenya should move back to Kakma and Dadaab refugee camps. It was not until the third and final paragraph that Lenku gave government's plan for security. The state would be sending an additional 500 police officers to Mombasa, Nairobi, and what was vaguely referred to as other environs. And the assurance that over 100 people had been arrested in connection to the 6 deaths in Likoni. Now, 49 of those arrested were released after being charged with idling. But to further prove a point, Lenku made a surprise visit to the Central Business District in Nairobi at midnight. And listen to what he had to say about the state of security.
Okay. Kwa hivyo unataka kuhakikisha na pia waonyeshe wananchi kwamba iko safe kweli.
Iko safe. Iko safe. Kabisa.
Now, of course, the CS has received a lot of flack for his comment, accused by some quarters of being disconnected and even offensive, seeing as he was followed by several bodyguards as he made the comment. But the icing on the cake, this must have come from Mombasa County Commissioner Nelson Marwa, who had this to say about criminals and perpetrators of crime.
Wale si watu wa kushikwa wamepatikana ndiye huyu ako na hiyo bunduki. Mariza yeye hapo. Anapelekwa kotini kufanya nini na ameua watu 6? What justice is there? You have killed 6 people. You have been arrested, unapelekwa kotini. Who is going to be your witness in court? Na ujuri umeua, utamufufua aende kuwa witness wako kotini? No, let's be very fair here. We must be fair here. Akipatikana, tunamumaliza on the spot.
Now, the Inspector General of Police, David Kimayo, has since dismissed the statement, but the events of this week have triggered several questions regarding the security of post-Westgate Kenya, including the efficacy of our intelligence and security personnel. Here to discuss these very issues on Checkpoint, I'm joined by Mwenda Njoka, who is a spokesperson for the Ministry of Interior, Mwenda Mbijiwe, who is very well known here, popular visitor at KTN, he's a security consultant, and Jonathan Lee Hamaka, who I understand is also called Kinodhia. Thank you for joining us, gentlemen.
Thank you.
Wenda, let's begin with you. Government has been on the spot this week, and there's some quarters who say that we are attacking you fairly, we being the members of the public. Do you think this is true?
Absolutely not. From the intro you've given, clearly you've not mentioned the fact that the IEDs that were discovered in Mombasa, that is a big achievement, because that stuff, if it got where it was supposed to get, and it was got because our security forces were alert and they acted in good time.
All right.
That is besides that, also let me correct you also on the grenade, that the supposed grenade that is said to have been discovered in Peketoni. The actual thing is that it wasn't a grenade. It was a bombshell from an old bombshell that had exploded. I don't know why somebody put it there.
Wanda, your office is the one which is saying that it was an old bombshell, but the OCPD of Lamu West is saying that it was definitely a grenade. So who do we listen to? Because one of the problems that has been cited with security is the many channels of communication that are in the security sector.
Okay, what's happening again also when you have a situation where you don't have centralized channels of communication with the government, with the way the government is set up, with the the decentralization of government systems, where you have a situation where you have so many voices, and as a result of that, you end up having confusion. That is a fact. But the truth of the matter, the information we have from down there is that this was a bombshell that was harmless.
All right. It's interesting you should say that, because when I ask people to tweet us, Ken Korir immediately says Olelenko and Kimayo are more interested in PR than fighting security. What do you think of that, Bijue?
I'll be very fair, but at the same time also be very frank. I think before Westgate, our understanding of security and how government did security was significantly different than it is after Westgate.
When you say different, do you mean better?
To a large extent, a little bit better. On a scale of 1 to 10, before Westgate, I would give government 2.5. After Westgate, I would give them 3 out of 10.
Njoka, what do you think of that? I mean, you're being graded here and you're being told that you're not doing a good job.
Okay, actually, what has happened also is good to appreciate. There are a lot of efforts that the government is making to improve security. It is a fact that there are serious challenges. One of the key problems that we have is that for the last 20 years, the security sector has been neglected. And it takes an event or an occurrence like Westgate to give people a wake-up call. And
what about the 1998 bombings? Wasn't that an event that should have awakened?
That was an event, but I'll give you also an example. America has had, some countries have also had 1 or 2 incidents after the other, and you still keep improving. There is no place where you have 100%. But we have had some lessons we've learned from Westgate, and I can tell you confidently that right now there are many initiatives that are being put in place.
But talking about 98, because you brought it up, I don't really think government learned anything from 98. We thought that was a U.S. Embassy problem. It didn't concern us. I was in the Air Force that time, and that first night we spent our entire night with my colleagues at the Air Force rescuing people, and we had nothing. I mean, we had no equipment to work with. We just depended on bare hands. It took about 2 days for the Israelis to arrive with sniffer dogs. We had dogs at the Air Force, and there are many dogs all over the country, but our dogs were not trained to sniff life, you know? Okay. So we had to get the rescue of the Israelis coming. So I don't think after 98 we learned anything, and I really hope after Westgate we won't come back here 16 years later and just pass the same verdict like I'm passing, that after Westgate we learned nothing. I hope we can learn something this time.
Jonathan, I'd like to bring you in at this point. There's been a lot of American stuff being thrown in. You're American. You've worked for the American Marines or Naval Service?
Air Force.
The U.S. Air Force. Looking at this as a security consultant with foreign eyes, do you think we're doing the right thing as Kenyans in terms of our security?
Yeah, I think the government is doing very many high-level operations that the Kenyan people are not aware of, that are keeping you safe on a daily basis. If there was no security in government, as you're suggesting, you would see hundreds of terrorist attacks on a daily basis. Is there room for improvement? Absolutely. But this is the case anywhere in the world. And I think one of the best recommendations to improve security is to do real-life threat analysis. So you would have a real-life scenario where terrorists have taken over a mall or a church, and then you would have your team respond. You could determine the effectiveness of the response, the timeliness of the response, and by doing such activities, you can make yourself far better prepared to combat terrorism.
And when you look at the Kenyan security forces, how would you grade them? As Mijue has said, he would probably give them a 3. What would you give them?
I haven't been here long enough, I don't think, to observe. My family is Kenyan, so I understand the issues at hand, but I couldn't give you a grade at this time because I haven't studied them in detail enough to make such a guess.
All right, Njoka, I just want to throw some figures for you. In 2012, Kenya was rated as one of the countries with the highest murder rates per 100,000 inhabitants. It was said that for every 20 deaths, rather for every 100,000 inhabitants, 20 deaths occurred because of murder. This is from the United Nations Office on Drugs and Crime. Then there is a crime index by various organizations which seems to suggest, and this is from 2014, that Kenya has one of the lowest crime indexes in the world, 4th only to Afghanistan, Venezuela, and Guatemala. So when we see the CS walking the streets and telling us that we are safe, and figures, facts are showing us that we're not, how are we supposed to believe him?
Okay, let me first explain the issue of CS walking in the streets. Definitely, you don't expect him to walk without security. It's a practice everywhere, and whether the streets are safe or not, that is not an issue. But
what do you mean that's not an issue? That's what he said.
What I'm saying is that you implying that you shouldn't have security if he thinks the streets are safe. Even in the street, and there is nowhere in the world that you have ministers or presidents walking in the streets just because the streets are safe. That's what I'm saying.
But do you think him walking in the streets with or without bodyguards was enough for him to quantify whether or not Nairobi
the message here is that he was leading from the front. There was an operation that was taking place, and he was part of that operation. That is what, and the question he was asked is whether the country is safe, and he said it is safe from a point of, if you go with the figures and what the information that we have right now, like for instance, between February and March 15, we had the time we launched what we call RRI, which is a Rapid Response Initiative. We've had about 7,000 cases of 7,000 criminals arrested in various parts of the country. Yet, those incidents are not reported by the media. What the media looks at is the negative. 1 or 2, 3 cases are reported, and they are given very high prominence to create that creates the impression that the country is completely
But Mwenda, come on. I mean, in all honesty, the RRI, fine. Some critics might say it was a good initiative. Others might say it has its loopholes. But do you really expect the media to constantly applaud and laud the government and the security forces for what they're meant to do anyway? It's their job to make these arrests.
Absolutely.
Let me help my namesake here. Hope I really wish that Ole Lenku on that night showed up on site, dressed up in some serious combat, dressing. Maybe the police would have given him a combat jacket and, some helmet. And the bodyguards around him, they could remove these guys with the suits and bring the police with their guns or rungus. We would believe he was under escort and in a security situation. I think Honorable Lenku's advisors need to tell him that when you're doing security, he's too nice for security. He presents a very kind person to security. One time I appeared on a TV show talking about security and I was smiling all the time. And the bashing I got online was, that guy is not serious, he's smiling too much. But Lenku is too nice for security, his face. We need him to put on a more serious face than that. And of course,
but he could have the most serious face in the world and still not deliver on what he is talking about.
That's what I'm saying. On the street, he should have been on a combat dress, not on a suit. That's why people didn't take him seriously.
I'm really not buying your argument.
Let me interject there.
It's not convincing. Let's go back to Joker.
I was trying to help my...
We'll take that advice and see what happens in the next. Okay. But for the time being, actually the minister has been on record saying that from now on he's not going to be talking about security, he's going to be seen acting. And that is one of the things that he's been doing.
Actually, Kenyans hoped that Lenku being a Maasai, we would see a Moran Rio doing security. And the way Moran do this thing. So hope somebody can advise him.
I'm just going to ignore that last statement. But Jonathan, let's just come back to you. There's an issue that has been raised in Kenya about, the link between Kenya's involvement in Somalia and the surge in criminal activities and, of course, terrorist activities in Kenya. Is this a real threat to nations that have, for lack of a better word, intervened in other nations?
It is absolutely a real threat. Anytime you try to combat terrorists on any level, especially when you go after where they live, they're going to retaliate. They are here, they're living among you, and it's not the ones you know about that you need to be concerned. It's the ones you don't know about. And you need to hit these guys where they live. Go after them. Kenya is doing the absolute right thing by going to Somalia, by chasing them down in the streets here. But you need to take this a step further. You need to seize their bank accounts. You need to have drones on the borders for surveillance. When people are coming into your country, you need to thoroughly check them. If you don't have a good reason for entering Kenya, you don't come in. So there are additional steps that I think can be taken to help combat this issue of terrorism.
All right, let's take a breather there, and let me just read some of the tweets that are coming in. Someone says, Denmark ministers go to work on bicycles without security. What is Njoka talking about at KTN Kenya? That's Jay Mule. We hope that Njoka is going to respond to that. Somebody else says, the government has failed. There has been a lot of rhetoric and no action. The Mombasa arson has stayed rather the Mombasa car, I think that's what you were talking about, has stayed with the policeman for over 1 week. And then there was somebody who had said that the only word he can use to describe the Kenyan security situation is a joke. Joka, this is the ministry you're representing, which is being touted as being a joke.
It isn't a joke. If it was a joke, this country would be...
So, okay, fine. Tell us, earlier on you had said, you know, let me give you the benefit of the doubt. Absolutely. Earlier on you said that Lenku says he does not want to be seen speaking, he wants to be seen acting. Yeah. Can you please tell us what he has been doing?
There are very many initiatives that are in place. And as Jonathan has mentioned here, some of the investments that you need to make to deal with the threat of issues like terrorism are not just, it is not conventional warfare. It's not a warfare that you can see the enemy and you can see the enemy is there dressed in this or that uniform. The enemy is within. We've had initiatives like something like Nyumba Kumi is an initiative that was initiated during when Lenku came in place. And it is an initiative that, given support from Kenyans, is going to be a good fruit. Yeah. Then we have investments that are being made by the government. Not too long ago, the government gave out 1,200 vehicles for police, which were distributed in various police centers. That, again, is part of the initiative. Mm-hmm. You may not feel those initiatives because of the underinvestment that has been placed in the security sector for the last 20 years. That's what we are suffering for right now.
When you talk about underinvestment, do you say the Treasury is not giving the security personnel and generally security as a whole an
let's even start with the policeman on the beat. If you pay your policemen poorly, if you don't house them properly, clearly you are setting yourself for the fail. That has been the problem for the last several years. Right now we have projects for police housing. We have projects for modernization of police. We have projects for modernization of communications equipment and systems. But some of them we are also being challenged because you are under tender. You have all manner of problems from courts and from the business community, and you end up not being able to implement what you're supposed to. The reason being the kind of laws that we have. We have very complex procurement laws. Sometimes it's like they are meant not to make government do its work.
Bijiwe, Joka is trying to give us a link between the economics of the macroeconomics and how it affects security. Policemen, of course, being given good pay, as he's talking about. But then there's someone who suggested that iniquities also create room for crime. Do you think Kenya is effectively dealing with unemployment, corruption, in order to get rid of insecurity?
I think the whole foundation of insecurity, especially in most third world nations, is, among other things, socioeconomic problems like lack of employment, lots of youths being out there on the streets without jobs, and when you sleep 2-3 times without food, and the gentleman across the street has food. We hear somebody that was robbed in Karen the other day. The guys who were robbing him said, "You can't, eat food and have enough for your pets when my children are sleeping hungry. That's why I'm coming for you." So I think there should be let me call it a holistic approach to fighting insecurity, in the sense that we try to build our economy, we try to get more youth working out there, create more jobs for the youth. And this is a challenge that the Jubilee government said they'll be creating, like 1 million jobs every year. But then the president shortly qualified that by saying this was not only essentially a government thing, it also government would create the environment, and then the private sector would create more jobs. And so I think it's a holistic thing.
So do you think then, Njoka's ministry, rather the ministry that you work for, which is the Interior Ministry, should also now start looking into employment?
Really, it's unfortunate that Njoka's ministry, as you said, has to take the buck has to stop with them. But if we were fair as Kenyans, we know that the problem of insecurity is much deeper than hitting at our security minister and this office. Our problems are much larger and deeper, and that's why one of my suggestions earlier, I said, I think we also need to involve the county governments in this issue of resolving our socio-economic problems, because they are always the basis and the foundation of the insecurity that is around our country. Hardly do you find insecurity among people that have, don't have, have jobs, or people that are living well with their families, the rate of crime goes considerably low.
All right. Jonathan, you're in a country, America is ranked 4th in terms of iniquities, and we know that there's quite a number of people who are incarcerated in the United States of America. Looking at this situation with foreign eyes, do you think that that will be enough to reduce the rate of crime in the country?
It's a difficult thing when you look at this matter of crime in any country in particular. Not only do people need jobs, but on the reverse side, simply incarcerating people because they've committed a crime without going to the root cause of all the issues will never solve the problem. So I think specifically in Kenya, from what I've seen in all the places I've traveled, if there could be better initiatives as to helping young men and women gain jobs, it would significantly lower crime. And I don't think simply arresting them is a viable solution.
Mwenda, we have seen a lot of arrests from Likoni and Nairobi. Some people are claiming that those are arbitrary arrests. Have you been able to, first of all, get the people who are behind Likoni? Because there's confusion as to whether or not they were really gunned down or whether the suspects are still roaming, if there has been any indication of...
Okay, I was in Mombasa last week with the cabinet secretary, and one of the things that, actually immediately after the Likoni incident, and one of the things that came out is that among the suspects that were arrested, there is enough evidence to indicate that suspects are among them. But as of now, I can't say 100% whether that is so until they are charged in court, because again, it's an active investigation.
And when do Kenyans find out? Because we're still waiting to find out what happened with Westgate, who was responsible, where these people are, how many they were.
Westgate was the Al-Shabaab. They left their calling card, so I believe that is. And seriously, the issue of fighting, especially when it comes to terrorism, is a very complex business. And it comes very different. I mean, it's complex, and the enemy changes all the time. So you have to keep on also changing your tactics. Some of the issues, some of the things that you find or our security agents find, they may not be able to discuss them in public or even tell the media we've done this or we are doing this and this. And
so investigations are underway. It's important that you've mentioned that terrorism is becoming dynamic, and my question to you is, how does government discern when an incident is an act of terror as opposed to an act of crime? Because in Likoni you were very specific. Officials said that this is an act of crime and not of terror.
Okay, let me put it this way. Like the Likoni incident, later information indicated actually it may have been even in terrorist an act of terrorism. But as of now, again, the way we communicate, the way sometimes you don't want to give certain information, it may lead to public panic. It was coming almost immediately after the incident of IEDs being the incidents of IEDs in Mombasa. There are all those dynamics that we don't, even as we communicate in the, especially in the security sector, it's very critical that we don't send out information that creates public panic.
All right, Mbijiwe, we have seen an upsurge in the use of improvised explosive devices and the readiness to use them on unarmed civilians. As a person who has been on the ground working for the Air Force, how do you think the Kenyan security forces, the policemen on the ground, can deal with this? Because, I mean, in May of last year, we saw a person use an IED, create an IED using fertilizer, readily available stuff which cannot be standardized.
I think our solution to that would be public awareness programs, and that's why I hail the Nyumba Kumi initiative. We have a lot of veterans from the military, from the police, living among our communities. Nyumba Kumi should find a way to use them. And I had a talk the other day.
Do you think Nyumba Kumi will work, honestly?
Yes, I had a talk with the chairman the other day. I think if my namesake here could go back to his office and ask them to really fund that project, I think the project is, the initiative is ideal. It would solve our problems. The issue would be if we pump in money. What happened in the United States, and Amaka is here to confirm that, is after 9/11, they realized this is a real problem we have to solve. Apart from all the monies that they costed them, they pumped in money into public awareness programs. They created, for example, the early warning system, terror warning system, and rolled out some colors, and everybody in the country was educated on what those colors mean. I've been in several United States airports, in the past, and you see colors displayed everywhere, and almost every U.S. citizen now knows if it's a red, if it's a yellow, if it's a green, this is what it means. If Nyumba Kumi could get enough funding, I am of the belief that Nyumba Kumi can help solve our problems. The people in Karen know this now. After they got several incidences of insecurity in Karen, they all gathered, and I was impressed to see all those people who live in Karen. We think it's an estate for the rich. All those people forgetting about their wealth and coming together and saying, gentlemen, we have a problem, let's fix it. And they said, Nyumba Kumi is one of the things that we roll here to fix our problems. Number two, as we come together to work on the Nyumba Kumi thing, we should engage and train the public. The time when we used to hide issues from the public. The other day, we wrote to the IG when he was the police commissioner to get a permit to go and train the public on counterterrorism. And we've been doing this in churches. Just today, I came from Machakos, Redeemed Gospel Church, invited by their bishop, Dr. Mutua, to discuss this with the church. Yeah. People are taking this seriously, but if we do not train the public, it's time we take those grenades from the armories and go and show the public.
Train the public. You think Nyumba Kumi will work with more involved civilian
involved
action?
We should get every civilian involved in our national security. And the IDs, for example, the one they found in Eastleigh, we should be able to go out there, carry IDs, say, if you see this, someone with fertilizer, someone trying to buy sulfuric acid, someone buying ball bearings or getting nails and breaking bottles, they are trying to make an ID.
I'm being asked to wind up, but Jonathan, I do have to ask, it appears that the Kenyan security forces are dealing with fluid and amorphous perpetrators. They seem to walk in and go out through the wind. How can Kenyans who have displayed lack of faith with security forces then come out and give this information of this same perpetrators who we are told are our neighbors and are our friends?
It's equally important on two levels, that when the public notices a lapse in security or a believed lapse, that they report it, and then equally important that the government responds. If, for example, in America, you call in a terrorist threat, within probably literally 5 minutes, you'll have 100 police, FBI, and other agencies respond on site to check out this complaint. So you have to get to that level here, and it's difficult with everything that you're facing, the budget constraints, additional trainings that are needed, but this is a level of security you must reach.
All right, and as we wind up, Mwenda Njoka, when the Cabinet Secretary for Interior was at KTE and speaking to Yvonne Okwara not too long ago, about 2 months ago, as he was launching RRI, he did say that from this day, and I'm quoting him, the game will change. Yeah. From this day, the game will change. What has changed since 2 months ago?
Okay, what has changed is the gains that I was mentioning about, like the arrest of those suspects who had IEDs in Mombasa. There have been the arrest of those IEDs and the suspects in Mombasa. There have been also cases where we've arrested quite a number, even of terror suspects. Actually, 129 as of about 15 days ago. We had about 129 terror suspects who were arrested, and they are going to face charges. And we are following up.
Have they been arraigned in court yet?
Not yet. They were arrested, but they are going to be appearing in court. And then besides that, let me just point out something about issues of security. You find the security agents or security agencies have to be 100% correct all the time. Whereas on the people we are dealing with, our clients, if you call them so, have to be correct only 1%, and they wipe out our 100%. That is unfortunate.
It's a good argument, Mwenda Njoka, but there's a reason why you're employed to be in that seat. There's a reason why the CS is where he is. I'm really appreciating all the comments and the views that you're sending to us on KT and Kenya. Do keep them coming. Unfortunately, this is where we have to wind up this edition of Checkpoint, but the conversation goes on social media. We take a short commercial break. When we come back, we do have the sports with Lee Mashira.